Let's start with this: a potential bump in the road for Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson's plan to provide school lunch for all children in all public schools in the city. This is being funded by a levy that voters approved last year. Free lunches were supposed to start this September, the coming school year, now just less than 2 months away already. But now we have Council President Joy Hollingsworth, who is pushing back on this a little bit. She wants the money for after school and weekend food programs serving Black children.
About 51% of Black children are not reading at their grade level, and that is a problem. And the average household income of a Black family is $55,000, and half of the murder victims in the city of Seattle, gun violence victims, are Black males, and they only account for 4% of the population. And I could argue that that is because of food insecurity and resources. There is studies and information out there about that, and that's why I go so hard for the South End and for Southeast Seattle and for the Duwamish and for places that have been underrepresented and underfunded, particularly for this. And I know that food can really heal communities.
Now, Council President Hollingsworth has taken some heated questions in recent months about what she calls openly her black budget. She says there's the city council budget, and then I've got the black budget, a formal allocation of city funds, taxpayer funds, designated by race. But you may recall that could run into some constitutional challenges, like Washington state's other race based programs, including the Covenant Home Ownership Program, which is already under federal scrutiny at this point. So we're going to be watching this closely. My Seattle colleague for the Center Square Washington, Randy Diamond, is putting up an article on this today. So take a deeper dive and check out his article. And now to Washington's 42nd legislative district, up in the northwest corner of the state, Whatcom County, around Bellingham and Blaine, if you're familiar with that part of the state. Pretty deep blue politically for the most part, some little tinier pockets of red, but pretty Democratic stronghold for the most part. But there's a Republican challenger that is very much hoping to at least make it past the August 4th primary, which is 3 weeks from today, and then have voters learn a lot more about who she is. She believes this is the time for change. And as I mentioned in the opening here, you'll be seeing those primary ballots likely in your mailbox this weekend or early next week, as they are scheduled to be mailed out later this week. July 17th is the deadline for that. So, Bellingham Democrat Eamon Collins, he announced back in February that he was going to run for that state's Senate seat, which is being vacated by Senator Shoemake. And so it kind of opened up, and a bunch of candidates went in, but it is likely that this Bellingham Democrat Eamon Collins is probably going to be ending up in the top of the tier and potentially advancing after August 4th. He's a science teacher at the Lummi Nation School and chair of Whatcom Democrats. And he followed his announcement to run, followed the announcement of Port of Bellingham Commissioner Michael Shepard, also a Democrat. And I invited both of them to join us for an interview, a video interview, and repeatedly requested that over the last several days and have not received a response from either of them. But I do want to share with you part of an interview from the Republican candidate for Legislative District 42 and that Senate seat up there, because she did respond to me. And this is Blaine School Board member Erica Craig. Again, a Republican and the only GOP contender really in this race at this point. Numerous attempts to get the other two. Again, I did not receive any response. But Craig is a psychologist. She's got a couple of behavioral health facilities that she runs up in Whatcom County, so a small business owner herself. And she told me that she's very concerned about the direction of the state, concerned about education. And obviously, as a Blaine School Board member, she's kind of in the know there. And she's very concerned about struggling business operators in Whatcom County. She wants to see things turn around. And she said that's why she's running.
I have a unique background. My husband and I have small businesses, and we are very keenly aware of so many of the so many of the things that happen in Olympia. The decisions that are made are they happen, they get railroaded through, and they are crushing small businesses in our community. And we feel it firsthand. We also, we know that some of these ideas, they can seem like a good idea in theory, maybe well intentioned, but in practical reality implementation stage, they can really crush a small business. And we see a lot of places closing their doors, a lot of people leaving the state, and we can't afford to just not have those organizations represented at the table too, because they are what pay our tax dollars. Those are what our schools feed off of. Those are what our social services feed off of. Those are important too. We need more balance in there, and we need more people who have an understanding of what it's like to run a small business and what that takes, because we can't lose that sector fully or we're going to not have no tax base, which is kind of where it feels like we're headed towards. My opponents, they both work as teachers for school districts, one at Western and one um, at a high school. And so I think it's a really different, those are valuable, important jobs too. But what we really need in Olympia right now is we need people who have an understanding of not just those industries, but also the private industries that pay for those industries in order to keep it all sustainable from collapsing.
So in the days to come, if either of the Democrats running up there for that Senate seat in District 42 end up accepting a request for an interview, I'll be glad to take those and bring you updates in a future episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I do want to share one thing that Eamon Collins said on his website. He said, as the volunteer vice president of the Culshan Community Land Trust, I hope I'm saying that right, I've seen how state and federal housing policies land on residential construction sites in Whatcom County. And he said that's one of the main reasons that he is running. He talks a lot about permanent housing affordability. And then from the website of the other Democrat who is likely to, come out on the top after the August 4th primary, Michael Shepard. He's an educator, community advocate, and three-term Bellingham Port commissioner who's been teaching at Western Washington University for some time. So you can check out either of those candidates' websites for more information. And again, August 4th, the primary, just 3 weeks away. Ballots going out on the 17th, and you still can register to vote. You can actually register to vote for the August 4th primary right up until July the 27th. So you still have plenty of time to do that. You can go to votewa.gov and do that online, or you can go to your local elections office and register in person if you're not yet a registered voter. All kinds of stuff on this. We've obviously got lots of state elected positions that are open. We've got U.S. representative positions that are up, local judicial races, as well as state Supreme Court offices. We've talked a lot about that. And all of these offices, because we are a top two primary state, are narrowed down to the top two vote getters. There could be 7, 8, 12 candidates running for any given office. It doesn't shake down to one Republican, one Democrat, one independent, whatever. It's just the top two vote getters, regardless of party. And again, that is just 3 weeks from today. Hugely important to participate in the August 4 primary. So that's a wrap on today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily for this Tuesday. Always appreciate you watching. Check out our Center Square Washington page for these stories and more. And I hope we'll see you again on Wednesday. All right, moving on to our next segment in today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. High school seniors in our state may soon have to fill out the federal student loan or the federal application for federal aid, the FAFSA, in order to graduate. Governor Ferguson this week came out with held a press conference at Highline College in Des Moines and said he's going to ask the state legislature to make this a graduation requirement. We have a handful of school districts that already have this as part of their curriculum, but this would be all 295 public school districts in the state. requiring students to fill out the FAFSA. So here is the governor at Monday's press conference at Highline College.
Washington State is literally the most generous state in the entire country for providing financial assistance. And by that I mean free money for young people to go to college or to get job training. The state legislature in past years has created a program that makes us the most generous in the entire country. So for example, if you're a family of three, two parents and one child, or one parent and two children, and you make $70,000 or less a year, that young student can go to a college in Washington State for free. There is that level of assistance. If you make more money, you can get significant assistance to pay for that education or that job training. That's the good news. Here's the bad news. In order to access those funds, you've got to complete this form, the FAFSA form, or a state equivalent, the WAFSA. The bad news is Washington State has historically not just done poorly in completing that form, we've done terribly, okay? Last year we ranked 47th out of 50 states in having young people complete this form that can unlock so many dollars for them to pursue in education or job training. We put in significant resources this year to try to improve our standing. I signed an executive order to create a group that would come up with ideas on how we could do a better job to get the word out to young people about the importance of completing this form. We made improvements. We moved from 47th to 40th. We moved up 7 spots. That's great. That's thousands of more students who are unlocking that possibility, but let's be honest, 40th is not going to get the job done. The good news is that there is an alternative. More and more states are requiring young people to complete the FAFSA in order to graduate.
So, as you heard Governor Ferguson say there, students who don't want to fill it out could have an opt out option. It's not, yes, it's going to be required, but if you don't want to do it, if you say, I'm not going to college, or my parents make too much money, I'm going to college, but we know that we're not going to qualify for any federal or state aid, and so you don't want to fill it out, you can do that. And again, lawmakers are going to be pressed on this from legislation from the governor. Now, he said that around half of Washington families right now qualify for higher ed, according to the Student Achievement Council, but many of them are just simply either lacking the knowledge that they have this option and that the aid's available, or choosing not to. So they want to push this requirement. So what to make of that? What to make of, is there something else? Is there another motivation for why the governor would be wanting to push the FAFSA? So I reached out to Washington Policy Center's Education Center Director, Vicki Murray, to ask about that and her thoughts on the push.
I think it's fine to make sure that students are aware that either federal or state resources exist, and most students can opt out if they choose not to. I don't. There's nothing that's preventing school districts from making this available now, offering it as part of their math classes or counseling. So to me, like, this is fine. I think where our focus really needs to be is on our students, high school students and soon to be graduates, prepared for college level work. And all available evidence suggests that our high school students are not. I mean, let's just consider the results. Let's look at first 10th graders. In ELA, just 60% of 10th graders are on track for college level work. It drops down to 31% in math. And then if you look at 11th grade science, we're only talking about 37%. So while I think it's important to let students know about financing options, it's far more important that we make sure our students are prepared for college level work. And I think that's where our focus needs to be.
Now, there were some posts on social media this week that I noticed from some suggesting that they don't trust the governor's intentions for pushing the FAFSA as a graduation requirement. Some were suggesting that maybe they just are looking to obtain and document financial income tax data for eventually if the income tax is pushed to a lower threshold in the state of Washington. So I asked Murray directly about that, and she said she doesn't really think that's the case, at least not at this point, but she suggested it is something to pay attention to when Governor Ferguson offers that legislation to lawmakers.
My understanding is as of this point, it can't be shared with anybody outside of student, applicants' chosen colleges and also the Washington Achievement Council. Now, I think what perhaps we should pay attention to when the governor does submit his proposed legislation, let's look for that to see if there are changes with student privacy, data privacy, and how very sensitive that would be considered. Very sensitive, personally identifiable information like that can be shared. So I would say at this point, I haven't seen anything, but let's keep an eye out.
I also reached out to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Rakedahl, to see if they too support the push for requiring the FAFSA as a graduation requirement. And I received back this from OSPI saying, we're supportive of efforts to require students to complete the FAFSA or the WASFA, that's the Washington State equivalent, or affirmatively opt out as part of their graduation requirements. They noted that last week, Rakedahl announced his proposal for a post secondary launch course. It would be a required course for all graduating seniors to prepare students for their next step and beyond. And now back to a minute for the low test scores that Vicki Murray at WPC was noting. She said, let's not talk so much about a push for the FAFSA or ban on cell phones and everything. Sure, those things might all be great things to push for, but let's not use that as a deflection from what the real issue is. And that's pretty dismal test scores in the state of Washington. A lot happened during the pandemic, and test scores pretty much across the country went down for most, if not all, grade levels. But some states have quickly recovered. Washington state has been very slow to recover. And in some areas, we haven't at all. And the new kids count data just came out. I want to highlight a couple of the notes from that. The 2026 Kids Count Data Book ranked Washington 17th in overall child well-being, 31st in education, and that's a 4-spot decline from last year. And data from 2024 reveals that 70% of Washington's 8th graders are not proficient in math. 68% of 4th graders are not proficient in reading. So a little bit disappointing with the test scores are going. And again, as Vicki Murray noted, she would like to see more attention paid to ways to improve those outcomes for students. Sure, we can push college at the same time. We can, maybe take cell phones away as a distraction in classrooms universally across the state. But until and unless we improve these outcomes for students, we're really not doing them any real favors. Now, when Central Washington voters begin opening their primary ballots, probably this weekend, many of those have arrived in people's mailboxes today because many were mailed out yesterday, others being mailed out today, and tomorrow is the deadline to get primary ballots in the mail. So people are getting those, and they might be confused about who President Trump has actually endorsed in the congressional District 4 race. This is the seat being vacated by Representative Newhouse. So, for the first time in a decade, it's an open primary, if you will, for that seat. And there are a bunch of contenders. Now, in today's episode, we're only focusing on sort of the top 3 fundraising candidates, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat who've kind of risen to the top and are most likely to end up being 2 of those 3 rising to the top after the August 4th primary, which again is a top 2 vote getters primary. So, regardless of party, whoever gets the most votes, the top 2 vote getters will advance on to the general. So, we have Yakima Republican Amanda McKinney and Prosser Republican Jared Sessler. both touting endorsements from President Trump. Now, the White House says they want Amanda McKinney, but Sessler says he has his own personal endorsement from President Trump, and he believes that his endorsement means more than hers. Now, both are vying, of course, for Trump supporters in that district and in this August 4th jungle primary. Now, Amanda McKinney, a well known name in the upper Yakima Valley, she is a Yakima County commissioner. And I spoke with her this week about why she's running and pressed her on the controversy over who really has the Trump endorsement.
I'm the only one with the receipts. When something doesn't pass the sniff test, I think any mom or dad out there who can listen to a story and find out whether or not it's believable, I am deeply humbled and honored to have earned President Trump's endorsement. I'm the only candidate who has his endorsement. He gave it to me on January 6th. It was public. It is in the same fashion as he has made all of his endorsements of every congressional, Senate, and gubernatorial candidate. It has never happened differently. And I'm the only one who has proof of that. And I would simply say that using an autograph as an example or representation of an endorsement doesn't pass a sniff test. But I would encourage everyone to really consider what is fact, what is truth, and what actually, more than anything, what makes sense, what actually makes sense here. The president is incredibly astute at looking into people he's going to endorse and align himself with. And it is very clear, and I've always made it very clear on record, that I did not agree and never did agree with Congressman Newhouse's vote for impeachment. And in the last election, the options were Congressman Newhouse or Jared Sessler. And Jared Sessler is not someone who is a serious candidate. He is not taken seriously by those people who come across him. And I can tell you that our district deserves a serious candidate representing them in Congress who understands the issues and what is at stake. And I am that candidate. And President Trump saw that. That's why I earned his endorsement all the way back in January on the 6th.
Now, in order to win, candidate McKinney will have to chip away at some of the support that Jared Sessler has built over his 5 years as a congressional candidate. Now, he got 46% from voters in 2024, barely losing to the incumbent congressman. And you may recall that Newhouse lost favor with some of the mega crowd because he voted for impeachment of President Trump, one of just a handful of Republican Congress members who did so. So he lost a lot of favor with some of the more mega crowd in central Washington by doing so. So in a Wednesday interview with me, Jared Sessler pointed to his proof of a Trump endorsement. So he said there is a text message that he sent to President Trump that he claims was then printed out and signed by the president December 9th of 2024. And in that text message, Jared Sessler was saying, shoot, we came so close. I thought I might, win the seat. I thought I might oust Newhouse, but if I run again, please have my back. I'm a big Trump supporter. I've always been your guy. And on top of that text message, he received something back from the president with the president's signature on top of that message. So Sessler says he believes that to be an endorsement for this next go round for this seat in Congress.
Yeah, it's for me personally, it's not worth it. This thing cost me more than you can imagine, but it is worth it for us as a unified America and for our beautiful state and for all the people that live here. We are getting ripped off by our government, and we need to start electing people who are not building a political resume, but they're actually interested in helping make sure that our government serves us and submits to us, the voters. And so to me, I put my full trust and faith in Jesus, and I believe this is what he's prepared me for the last 57 years to do. And, that's the reason why I'm doing it. I cannot sit on the sidelines and watch our country and our state be destroyed and do nothing about it.
And now West Richland's John Dureski, the sole Democrat in the race. It's a pretty red district, so he knows he's up against it, but he believes that he has momentum in his favor, especially with the two leading Republicans dividing GOP voters for this primary. He says there's no question he's going to advance from the August 4th primary. In fact, he thinks he will be the top vote getter by far. And I spoke with John Dureski earlier today.
One thing is, I got a call the other day from a woman, and next thing you know, she's in my living room and we're talking. And this is a two-time Trump voter. And she is mad about the Epstein files. For real. I mean, we still have not had, you know what they did with the Epstein files? They released the names and numbers and personal information of the victims and somehow protected the guilty, the people that were actually doing it. And I mean, I don't know, people are mad about that, mad. Like they were taught that this is a bad thing, and then they were promised that we were going to release all those files, and the files haven't been released. It's really that simple, and people are mad about it. We were also told that we weren't going to have any no more new wars, and here we are in the middle of a war that is causing real damage in this district. Fertilizer costs, fuel costs. Our agriculture people are under fire, and from a labor shock from the immigration, fuel costs, fertilizer costs, input costs on taxes and tariffs. It's like the Trump administration has taken it upon themselves to personally harm the people of this district.
Now, I am told that the White House has issued a cease and desist letter to Jared Sessler, basically saying, stop claiming you have the Trump endorsement because Amanda McKinney has it. I've been playing phone tag with the White House today to receive a copy of that letter. I do not yet have that, so I can't provide that proof from the White House for you at this point. And also want to mention there are other candidates in that district for race, but we're only focusing in today's episode in my article as well to be published on our Center Square Washington page today on the top fundraisers, these two Republicans and the one Democrat who is likely to advance after the primary. But check out the District 4 congressional race there in central Washington and at vote.wa.gov for more information on those other candidates. Of course, they're on your primary ballot if you live in that part of the state, and you can also find them in the state voters guide.